Selling to everyone is like selling to no one, and yet still a lot of companies do this. Mostly because they fear of saying no or losing a potential customer. But in the long term, this leads to lack of any trackable data or huge imbalance between clients. And because of this, in today's video, we're gonna talk about the biggest mistakes in client segmentation and how to make them work. So first of all, we have to start with what is a segment. And if you watched a previous video, then you are probably gonna remember the buyer persona, because the segmentation is part of it. So for anyone who haven't watched it, let's go very quickly through the concept of buyer persona and explain what role the segmentation plays in it. So we had the value proposition, which we talked about in our previous video. We have a decision person. I'm not writing as fast as I'm talking, So we have decision person, and this is gonna be a topic of our next video. So decision person, I'm gonna do this very quickly because I don't want you to be waiting until we get onto the topic of segmentation. We have a buying journey. Oh, sorry, not this color. The buying journey. The buying journey. What else do we have? We had the value proposition, decision person, buying journey, the problems and challenges. So I'm not gonna be writing it down because it's gonna take too long. Problems and challenges, and topic of today's video, which is gonna be a segment or segmentation. So let's write segmentation. So the segmentation is what you probably are thinking. So the types of companies that we want to work with. But what is the biggest challenge, okay? And why is the segmentation actually so important? Because as you see, when we go back to our buyer persona consists of all of those elements, Actually, if I write it down, we get the problems and challenges. So just write quickly problems. And so we've got the segmentation, we've got the value proposition, we've got the problems, decision person, and buying journey. And as you can imagine, the segmentation or the segment that we will choose is basically gonna change all of those, because the problems are gonna be different in each and every segment. The buying journey is gonna be different in each and every segment. The decision person is gonna be different. Therefore, our value proposition has to be different. And the biggest problem that I see in most of the companies where I'm talking to them is whenever I ask them, so who is your client? Like, what is the segment that you have chose? What is the segment that you are working with? Who is your potential best client? And they say, mainly when we ask, who are you working with? Everyone who comes to us, everyone who fills up the form on our website, anyone who comes to us, contacts us, we are working with them, like how could we not? And this is the very big problem, and this problem of course takes its life from a very simple thing, that a company probably has lack of clients. They don't really know how to actually possess the clients that they would like to work with, and at the end of the day, they are taking everyone on board who is willing to work with them, because they need to do this to stay alive in the business. But as you can imagine, this has a couple of problems. First of all, it leads to very big imbalance between clients. I see companies where there are, for example, two clients. Okay, two clients, we can write them down. So there are like two big clients. They're like, very happy. And they make for 50% of companies' revenue. Two clients, okay? And then we have approximately around 140 clients who make the rest of the revenue. So as you can imagine, this is a very big problem, and this is a very big chaos. Why? Well, if one of them goes bye-bye, we have 25% drop in revenue. But at the same time, when we want to really keep those two clients, because it's gonna be a huge problem for us, we have 140 clients that we are working with, and we also have to do all of the same things, probably on a smaller scale or anything, but still, as we are doing to those two. And it possesses a lot of problems, how can we keep our quality here, does it have to be on a cost of those 140 clients or at least part of them? You can see the problem, right? And you would think that the best idea would be to just get 2 more of those clients and get rid of those 140. But because no one did their homework here, and no one have thought how to do this here, no one have thought about this, that is the situation they have ended up with. The second problem with a segmentation is we work with everyone, right? We already said it, right? This is a beautiful thing to say, And what is problem of everyone is my first question, right? And you might say, no idea. So what is our value proposition to that everyone? No idea. How is everyone buying? You see where I'm going with this. We cannot really understand anything, right? So how will we do our marketing? What will we write on our website? How will we do our LinkedIn? How will we do our prospecting? How will we qualify clients if we are working with everyone? Also, again, those 140 clients possess another problem where they are a huge headache. I already mentioned that it's a huge chaos, but it's also a huge headache. I very often see people letting everyone on board, even that before they even started working with some of those clients, they knew that this cooperation between them is gonna be extremely painful, and it's gonna be just extremely, extremely hard. It's gonna be problems all the way, but they still got them because they went with that formula. We work with everyone. So there's another problem. I can keep mentioning them. This is something I once heard, a very beautiful name, and I think it really speaks well to the importance of segmentation. And this is called, I don't actually remember the name, but let's call it a business mathematics, or it was called advanced business mathematics. I remember now. Oh, sorry. So business mathematics, you may say, what do you mean by this? What is the business mathematics? So the business mathematics is when we choose not one segment, but at least a couple of segments, and we now get data, right? We can say which segment is the best, which segment pays the most, which segment has the shortest buying process, which segment has the least problems, which segment maybe is too hard for us, right? We always have to really push hard, because we don't have enough resources, compared to their demands upon us. But only when you get those segments, you actually write them down, you actually can see what segments is your company working with. Only then can you understand who is the best segment for your company based on this beautiful business mathematics, and therefore align all of your business going into that segment. And this is this is why this is a part of buyer persona, because as mentioned in the first video, buyer persona is part of a sales strategy. Everything comes from buyer persona, because based on buyer persona, if you've got all of this, you can do everything, right? If you understand who is your segment, you understand their problems, you've got a value proposition for them, you know very, very well. But only if you understand that your value proposition works the best for software houses below 100 employees but above 5 million pounds of revenue yearly, only then can you strategically go strictly towards that part of the market. But if you don't do your homework, once again, you're gonna be stuck working with everyone and having all of those problems mentioned already. So how to actually choose the segment, right? Because you would think that maybe this is obvious, maybe this is simple, but I see that mostly people choose segments just on couple of criteria, right? Of course, we can go that far, but I believe that most of the businesses have it, upon what they are doing, but we can do simply B2B versus B2C, because of course there are gonna be some businesses that will be able to work with both. And on this part, we can choose who do we want to work with, right? So let's say we go with B2B because we are mostly talking about the B2B, so let's go there. Next up, we've got the industry, right? So the industry can be anything, right? But you have to very well kind of understand, right? And I see a lot of people stopping there, and also stopping there on very broad specifics, like we are working with a production company, or with all of the service companies. Bam, but production company, you'll probably have production companies with 40 employees going all the way to probably around 10,000 employees. So this is a pretty broad group, so we can of course still on the part of industry go a level deeper. So not saying strictly, production companies, because of course we can go production or services, but we can go deeper, right? We can go professional services, or maybe tires production or windows production, or maybe we want to go software houses or marketing agencies or HR agencies. So here on the industry part, we can already go a little bit deeper on a couple of levels, but of course it doesn't end there. Next up, what we have is amount of employees. I don't think that how I'm giving it to you is like based on priority levels. I'm just giving you all of the factors that, in my opinion, are important to consider in your situation. So amount of employees, because obviously the company that has 30 employees is gonna have everything from problems to structure to people to decision person completely different compared to company that is gonna have 150, 250, 1,000 and 5,000 employees. So this is very important to understand, and this is also very important to understand what it means, because amount of employees is this pretty interesting part in segmentation where it speaks a little bit further than simply amount of employees. Because what it means when a company has 1,000 employees, well, it will definitely show the structure of the company. So it's probably more of corporation where there are plenty of decision persons. There is a very big structure, so the processes of purchasing something are much longer. They require much more paperwork. They are looking on the risks much deeper than the company with 30 employees. They might obviously pay a lot more or have more cash to spend, but it comes also with downsides. And now you need to understand, you need to answer yourself, does it work for me, right? Because can I actually wait 6 months on making a decision of are they gonna work with me or aren't they gonna work with me? Well, the question lies in your hands. If you say, yes, I just need 2 clients a year and 6 months is completely normal, it goes with my business, then that's amazing. But if you can't wait that long because you need to feed your family, then, well, it's probably not the best idea to go there, because I think almost always the amount of employees will simply speak to complexity of structure in the company, which directly refers to how long are they gonna be purchasing, and also your position on the market and things like that are gonna be much more important. So if you are a new company or you're selling something innovational, then I think going there is gonna be much harder to sell, rather in the smaller companies with like 50 employees, which are gonna have much quicker decision processes, buying processes. There is probably gonna be only 1 or 2 decision persons. Mostly it's gonna be still a CEO, maybe some high position director or someone like this. But compared to the corporation, it's gonna be completely different. So I wanted to make a little pause, of course, in here, to make you understand this factor and its importance. Of course, we have some geographical, geographical criteria, country or city. Again, it comes down to how are you working. If your job requires you to ride a car to a client's company, then it's probably good to start at least your segmentation with a pretty narrow circle, like 50 kilometers away from you or 100 kilometers away from you, and then go for the companies that are in different countries, because that's probably gonna be, well, much more difficult, much more costly. You get the point probably. So geographical is very simple, but it's worth pointing out. Of course, the length of how long they are buying. So length of buying process. It's what I already mentioned, but I think you can still put that into the consideration and kind of think about what is important for you, and based on this, make your decisions. Also, you can, coming back to business mathematics, you will be able to see this, because maybe you're working only with corporations, but they are the ones that are making their decisions twice as fast compared to the other ones. And this will also allow you to choose the best path for your business, for your value, where you want to go with it, etc. So we've got the industry, we've got amount of employees, we've got the geographical qualifications, whatever, length of a buying process or buyer process. It was supposed to be a buying process. Length of buying process. Well, of course, the segmentation allows us to do our prospecting and marketing much more narrower, so therefore much more personalized. So if you understand who is your segment, you can therefore understand what is their problem, and you can understand what is their buying journey. Therefore, you can very simply support them by writing exactly what they are searching in Google in your blog posts, articles, podcasts. You can do a webinar on that topic. But to go onto the buying process or to go into the problems and challenges, first you need to strictly choose a segment. Of course, we can go to things like how much is company making, and maybe this is important for you. So how much company makes, right? We are talking about the yearly revenue, but maybe companies that make less than, I don't know, 5 million pounds. Company talks, the company earns. Maybe if a company is doing less than 5 million pounds a year of revenue, you have already learned they don't have enough budget for your services, products, etc. Right? So this is very important to make sure, and you can maybe not very easily find this, but on Sales Navigator, for example, which is probably one of the better platforms, but also like on Apollo or Snow.io or Clay, you can very often find at least estimates of how much company is making roughly of a yearly revenue. And this is another important criteria, because going for companies that are making less than £1,000,000 is maybe doesn't make any sense for you, because your services are gonna be simply too expensive for them. Of course, in those modern tools, we can find things like how much their sales team grew throughout the last year, 2, 3, how much the company grew overall, and we can try to find things that might potentially indicate that this is a company that might have this problem triggered by, for example, growth. Let's go through my example. We, as a consulting, our biggest job is to take control of a chaos. And when chaos begins when there starts to be, when a structure is starts being built, right? New people come on board, and there is delegation of tasks to multiple people. First departments start showing up. There's a sales department, HR department, marketing department, and chaos comes in because there is maybe lack of good management, maybe someone just don't have enough experience to do this, and there is a lot of chaos. And as we all know, chaos leads to ineffectiveness. So what we do is we come on, and when we know that the company rose pretty quickly, so the market accepted them, the market likes their product, so there is no problem with selling, there is no problem with product, but there is problem that the company is not effective enough, is not making what they could make, not because they don't know how to sell, but there is simply too much chaos inside of company. In the previous video, we mentioned the value proposition, right? And segment is very important because while choosing a segment, you can test your value proposition, right? Because we already mentioned different segments are going to have different problems. And value proposition is a very nice thing to connect with the segment, because maybe your value proposition is very valuable to one segment, but doesn't really mean a lot to another one. And choosing a segment and going through all of those criteria I have mentioned to you will allow to gather the data to actually find which segment is the best for what you are doing. So I want you to remember about this, because this is the only way to actually test out your value proposition. Because if you are gonna be showing to everyone, then maybe 90% of people are gonna say no, and 10% is gonna say that's fine, and you will think that your value proposition is just not good enough. And what's much more probable is that your value proposition was simply not good enough for this bunch of people. But for those 10%, maybe it was good because it landed on a good grass, maybe you were lucky. But when you start picking up different segments, talking to them and trying to find which one is interested in your value proposition and which one completely doesn't care, only then will you be able to again do the business mathematics, gather the data, and focus all of your actions on companies that actually care about this value. So you will be able to close clients much faster and much more effectively. Because how else, right? How else? If you're gonna be talking every day, even to 10 companies, even if you would schedule 50 calls this week, but no one would really care and want your value, then it's just waste of time and nothing else. So therefore, I hope you will be able to learn more and align all of your efforts of your company and of your people, of your teams, to go for the companies that just make the most sense for your business, not just for everyone. And after half a year or a year, you will have so much data that you will be able to actually tell who is the best, what is working the best. And this will be just a perfect opportunity to grow, and you'll get ahead of probably 90% of competitors in your market. And for today, if you need help with any of those topics, or you are simply just looking to do some implementations or transformations, or maybe you have problems with your strategy, your sales strategy, maybe your marketing is not bringing efforts or your prospecting percentages are very low, then you can go to the SellQuark.com. I don't remember, is it this corner or this corner, but you will get a link to a free consultation. Just leave your email, phone number and subject, and then we'll come back to you, contact you, and help you with implementing anything that will change and help you in your current situation. For today, that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.